Welcome to the Criticona. Yo soy Criticona podcast. I am your host, Nia Navarro. And I have the lovely honor of introducing my friend, activist, poet, artist, local baddie, international hottie, as my guest for episode 1, season 1, Isabella Lopez.
Thank you. Happy May Day.
Hey.
Happy Mexico's fake Independence Day. Cinco de Drinko.
Has he asked you to be his Mexican for Cinco de Mayo?
I thought he was. I really thought he was going to. But I think he asked somebody else. And that's okay.
That's so Puebla. That's so French of him. That's a betrayal.
Yeah.
He has not asked you to be his Mexican for Cinco de Mayo.
No.
Time to let it go.
I know, yeah. And but I did have somebody else be my Mexican.
Hey.
Yeah.
Hey. Hey. Cool. Well, thank you for being here. I know that it's been a long time coming with your career as an artist. Since I've known you in 2023, you were doing poetry then. You've been doing a whole lot since then. Can you tell us more about your artistry and what do you do? How do you express yourself?
Yeah, I perform a lot in the Twin Cities, and I started doing spoken word through protesting. I know there's this term named artivism, and I don't know, maybe this is the inner critic in me that I'm just well, yeah, that's what art is.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, maybe that's just how I've seen it, but I think it's essentially that. I remember when I started doing spoken word in the Twin Cities, it would I would write a poem right before a protest, and then I would perform the poem in the protest. And I think in a way it was my way of just setting the intentions and the thoughts of what I wanted to, my intentions going into the action. And so from there, I think it helped me understand my own voice, you know. And now, I've been finding different avenues and ways of just, how much people do really like it, you know? Mm-hmm. But I think in that same way, I'm also exploring different ways to, have fun with my voice. So,
yeah. How does that kind of play out in music? How do you hear yourself in the sound that you create, and how does that process come out?
Yeah, I would say and I think just for context, I was arrested in June, almost a year ago. I was in jail for 3 days, and when I came out, I found this sense of shock in my body I couldn't let go. I found a lot of fear and anxiety at a whole different level in my body that I didn't know what to do with. So much so where I think I lost myself for a second. And so for me, I know I just needed to pivot, because doing actions and doing activism work was just going to look very different. And so I was very fortunate and happy to be you know what, now is a time where I get to think about my creativity and what does it mean to explore the mourning in this moment, not just for myself but for my community. And so much so that even during Metro Surge, I took a step back as much as I could to just kind of reevaluate where I was at. And from that, I wrote a song. I wrote a song about Liam. Really, it's about just being really frustrated with the American dream, and being really frustrated as somebody who's has to live into this narrative of the Western Hemisphere of that in order for us to do better, we can find better here. But we're being taken now or being killed. And so for me, when I wrote I wrote the song, it's called No American Dreams. And that one was very experimental because it was really different from all the other songs I've done. It's a lot more like indie, still in Spanish though. And I really just wanted to make it clear that I'm tired of this narrative. I'm so done.
Yeah, it's really like when I hear you talk about the narrative, I think there's so many different ways that this country still is not getting us right. I think because of the racial history of this country, so much of the narrative is like black and white thinking. And I think it's still struggling to find brownness in that. Even brownness is so like expansive, it's so big. But I think about like how, especially when you are going through a process of state repression, finding your agency and activism in ways that are still like impactful, but probably also like from a place of safety, and keeping safe. It's such a creative resistance to it. And I think as Chicanas, as Mexicanas, it's often, I think, made invisible, like how cultural resistance is actually so embedded in what we do, and how we continue to exist when we can't make it out to rallies or even direct action and do acts of civil disobedience, because the repercussions of doing civil disobedience are that much more higher for us, right, than a light-skinned or white body would. But that said, talking about narratives, one writer that comes up to me that I've been studying in my undergrad doing Chicano Latino studies at the U of M is that of Gloria Anzaldúa, who was a historic writer for a lot of Chicana scholars in terms of her writing being heavily like blending history and her personal experience, her narrative with also poetry. And so I learned that at first the academic world rejected her work as like not scholarly enough, because her writing was really emotive, like, you know, it was conducive to expressing her emotions and how she was experiencing these political systems. And so I think it's been such a foundational text in Chicanism, Chicana feminism. And at the same time, it's been deeply problematizing, right? Because her writing as someone who grew up in the border of Texas and Mexico kind of explores this nebulous place for us Chicanas, Mexicanas to exist that is not defined by whiteness. And so a lot of times I think those of us who have been raised as Latinas are trying to find our way back home or way back to identity, because this country erases our identity and then tell us, oh, you're supposed to be this and that. Poor, subservient, obedient, quiet, etc., right? And we're saying that's not at all who we are. That's also incomplete. And in reading Gloria Anzaldúa, it has been like a fountain of recovery for a lot of Chicanas. But also in recent times, her writings have become problematic in a way, challenging, because she writes from this place of indigeneity, right? Using indigenous constructs that now what people are saying, that's actually not at all what that means. So I think I'm curious, like, from your perspective as someone who is doing that work of actively constructing your identity as a Zapoteca woman, how do you approach like your identity? How do you make sense of this?
Yeah, I would say that first of all, I think that the act of decolonizing, we have to be reminded of the fact that it's a fish, we're a fish in water. Like, um, it's something that has already occurred. Like, we are colonized people, you know, like, and that's everybody on this Western hemisphere, like black or white, brown. And coming at it with that sense, I think that what people need to understand and realize is that first, Latinidad, it's an ethnicity, but it's not a race, right?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And even within, and it's like such a big homogenization of culture. And I don't think we've been able to really understand what we're missing out within like the indigenous context. And I'm only going to speak from there. Um, just because for me personally, I've seen the effects of mestizo culture and what it's done to my family when it comes to like them being ashamed of speaking Zapoteco, them not getting respect because they only spoke Zapoteco. Um, you know, and so I think as a Chicana as well, and I also identify as Chicana just because I did grow up in the States and I have a very different experience from like Zapotecos from Mexico, you know. Um, that being said, I feel like what we're missing is the respect of the original people. Like we can't even name.
Yeah.
There's like 60 different languages spoken in Mexico alone, you know, of like of indigenous pueblos. You know, there's like los nahuas, los triquis,
Purepecha.
Purepecha, Mixteco.
Oh, yeah.
You know, there's so many, and we're missing the point, and that is like the sovereignty of those people. And the sovereignty is not just the land, but their ability to speak up for themselves. And it's in the Mexican Constitution, you know, and that's something that administrations have not actually put into play in Mexico. I mean, Claudia, I think she's doing some things, I guess, but like that, you know.
And even then,
You know,
like, what is she really doing then?
right? Because there's also the extractiveness that
Yeah.
comes from like just the neocolonial context that we live in.
Yeah.
And so like being Chicana, like I've always heard about like being Aztec or you know Aztlan and like being Nahua, and like I remember having a conversation with my dad at one point because like me and my brothers were asking whatever, like we were like, what are we, like, oh, we're Aztec, and he's like, no, you're Zapoteco. And we were kids at the time, and so we were like, oh, like Zapoteco, like no one knows about Zapotecos, like I want to be Aztec.
Right.
But even then, like, that's a sense of erasure within, like, the diaspora or diaspora that we come from, right? And so I think that what we really need to be looking at is, like, the assimilation and the erasure and those practices that we have found ourselves in, you know?
Yeah.
And like I know for some people it's different. You know, I grew up going to Oaxaca. I grew up like seeing people like that are like indigena and either embracing it or leaving it behind.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And like mestizaje is like honestly I just think it's so messy.
It's so messy. Yeah. Well, can we get into it? Like,
yeah.
Let's get into it, friend. Yeah, mestizaje is like, right, this concept that there's a caste system, and according to your parents' race, that defines who you are. And so it was a tool of like the Spanish conquistadores to separate people into different racial hierarchies, right? And like mestizo very much being the box, kind of literal box of like if one of your parents is Spaniard and the other is indigenous, then you're mestizo, mestiza. And I feel like for so long that was part of my identity. I know that was part of my identity when I grew up in Mexico, like this mestizo narrative. But it's so unfortunate how because in the US we constantly face like attempts to erase our identity. That's kind of like one of the only things that we have that we feel that we can hold on to. Yeah. But then like this narrative tells you like, oh, if you're Mexican, you're mestizo. That might not be true for a lot of us.
Yeah. And I think it's also just like understanding the context that we live in, right? And like not being afraid of it, of like the Western Hemisphere is home to immigrants all over the world, you know, and like that's why I've never felt comfortable with this like this purist mentality of indigeneity, porque también con los zapotecos, like I know that a lot of our regalia que encuentras en el Istmo, that you find in el Istmo, like a lot of those different regalia was like inherited by like some of like Asian immigrants that came into that area. Yeah. And so, like, that's why even for my dad, like, he'll, like, dismiss it and be like, oh, that's not indigenous. But it is. Because, like, for us, like, we were able to use that as a way of resistance, right? Yeah. Because in the 1930s, in Oaxaca, there was, like, this rebirth of cultures. And that's where La Guelaguetza was born. Was that, like, all these different indigenous people came together with their regalia and their goods that they made from their hometowns to celebrate it. And that was the purpose of La Guelaguetza. It was really indigenous resistance. Now it's like, it's getting gentrified. Oof. Yeah. And that's the thing where it's like, there's this, the way I've been able to kind of see it now at this point in my life is that like, I feel like being brown and indigenous in the Western Hemisphere is almost like, it's almost like a maze. Like, it's not a labyrinth, it's not a path. It feels like a maze sometimes where it's like, we're always wandering to, like, find ourselves.
Okay, we got it. We got the thing.